Hello and welcome to this little showcase of all the party member weapons in Cage 1. That means Donald, Goofy and the other allies as well. Let's get started with Donald's Staves. This is the Mage's Staff, Donald's default weapon. As usual, we'll run through the stats. Strength and magic is pretty obvious, and we can categorize Donald's Staves into three types. Ones that boost magic, ones that don't, and his hammer weapons which reduce magic and focus on strength. There's also the recoil, this affects how likely it is Donald will stagger when his physical attack is deflected. Almost none of these ally weapons have any crit stats, but there are a couple, we'll see them soon. Furthermore, there's the buy and sell price. Some of these weapons are bought from the item shop, so that's where the buy comes in obviously, and only weapons that you can obtain multiples of can be sold, so any unique staff or shield, it won't be sellable and so it won't have any listed sell price here. Then I'll also indicate the source of each weapon at the bottom. The Mage's Staff is very representative of Donald and resembles clothing, the blue jacket like the ones that Donald wears, and a mage's hat. He's seen with a mage hat at the start of Cage 1, but this hat is also very reminiscent of the Final Fantasy Black mages. Just look at someone like Vivi. Next we have a recolor of the Mage's Staff, but this one is the Mage's Staff. It's a red version, if you couldn't tell. This one actually increases magic by 1. And so does the Wisdom Staff, the joint most expensive staff you can buy in the shop. This one does have a poor recoil though. It's a yellow and white recolor of the classic design. Next we have the two star staffs. First up is Morning Star, with a +2 strength and no increase to magic. It's the weakest and therefore cheapest staff in the shop. A Morning Star is a type of spiked mace-like weapon, and this takes the name quite literally, it's got a yellow star on top. The single recolor of this is the Shooting Star, not the Cage 3 Keyblade of course. We've got a green shaft and a blue star this time. The last three shop weapons are hammers that actually reduce Donald's magic and turn him into a barbarian. The Warhammer is the first of these, and it's quite simple in design. It's a long hammer with a couple of wings to decorate. Then the first recolor of this is the Silver Mallet. Notice the recoil on these is higher, makes sense given they're heavier, more brutal weapons. Finally, the Grand Mallet, which will set you back 4,000 money and only sells for 150. Yeah, the resale price gap gets a lot worse as the weapon quality goes up. Now, onto some more special staves. Violetta is a late game weapon for Donald that increases strength substantially, especially in Final Mix. Yeah, like with the Keyblades, they fiddled around with stat values for some of these in Final Mix, so instead of 9 strength we now have +11. Probably fair, given the reduction in magic. It's a pretty nice combo of red and purple, and the design isn't bad either. In Japanese this is called Critical Mace, and that name makes a lot of sense because, as you can surely see, we have some crit values for this weapon. Remember that ×1 crit in Cage 1 means it's at the base level, which is 20%. Most of the other staves have a 0 rate, as in they never crit. The bonus was toned down a bit in Final Mix, but it's still a massive +7. That's bigger than any of Sora's Keyblade's crit bonus, apart from One Winged Angel of course. Wow, that was a lot to talk about with Violetta. Lord Fortune is next. It's an all-rounder staff that you can get from the Fairy Godmother for collecting all of the summons in the game. This is quite clearly a celestial themed staff, planet orbits at the striking end, and some star and moon symbols too. I can imagine some poor Heartless getting a bit tangled up in this thing. The Dream Rod you can get from obtaining all 7 spells in the game at max level, so that's Faraga, Blizzaga and so on. It looks the same as the Dream Rod you can pick in the game's opening. I like that they found a way to reuse this weapon, rather than it just being locked to Sora in the Dive into the Heart section. If only we could get the Dream Sword as well. Oh well, there's always the randomizer I guess. Mickey's head symbol is here, and there's absolutely no joke to be made about that. We then have the Wizard's Relic, which is Donald's rare drop weapon. This is the same staff that wizards carry, and it will drop from them if you're lucky, or if you grind it out. The appearance of this is like 2 bat wings, quite fitting for the Heartless, and you could also say it's like a W for wizard. In Final Mix, this one had its strength stats basically swapped with the Dream Rod, and you may have noticed a sell price there. Well indeed, it isn't unique. You could have multiple drops of this, though at 0.2% chance that isn't very likely. A very recognisable weapon here, Save the Queen appears again in both Cage 2 and Cage 3. In this game it's a reward for completing the Hades Cup solo, and it's the best all-rounder staff in the game. The appearance does change in the next 2 games, but here it's got a very royal look, with gold, purple, red and blue, certainly fitting a high-tier staff for the Royal Wizard. Oh, and Save the Queen is also a weapon from Final Fantasy. Meteor Strike. This is the staff with the highest strength stat in the game, at plus 13. No bonus magic, but it doesn't reduce magic like Violetta, so that's nice. It's also the only staff with a recoil value of 90, and like Violetta, it has a chance of critical hits, though they aren't as strong. This is a new weapon in Final Mix, added to the giant crevasse in End of the World, and I really like the design. Very Heartless inspired, with those spiral, fake eyes, and a jagged maw. Plus, of course, it resembles a meteor plummeting through the atmosphere. I think this is my favourite staff design from this game. Finally, we have Fantasista, a weird name this one. Perhaps it's referencing a sister carbonated drink. No, of course it isn't. It's actually referencing a game named World Fantasista. This one was added by Final Mix as well. This one is all about magic, with a hefty +3, but of course the drawback is it's very weak. This is a synth item on the same list as Ultima, and so it is sellable, but that wouldn't be a great idea. I like the design. It's not quite as effective when you look at it like this as a static picture, but the runic language orbiting a central core is an interesting look. Perhaps it's a little dated, but it's still a cool concept. And we can't have Donald without Goofy, so let's look at his shields. The same stats apply here, but now I'd say recoil is a lot more important. One of Goofy's roles after all is to block attacks, so if he can guard without being staggered, that's pretty useful. First of all, Goofy's starter weapon, the Knight's Shield. Same again, 1 strength and no magic. It's a quote-unquote circular shield. I say that because you can count those edges, right? But hey, it's a 2002 game. The Mickey emblem is here again, and it's not the last time we'll see it either. Now on to the shop weapons. We'll start with the defense shields. Like Donald's staves, there's essentially 3 types of shield, and you can distinguish them by recoil this time. The store-bought pentagonal shields, I guess you could call them heater shields, they've got 60 recoil, so they're good if you want to focus on Goofy's defensive nature. The first tier of this is the stout shield. It's got rectangles and shapes and things. It's blue and yellow. Let's look at the next one. The golem shield is a recolor that's mostly red, and a higher strength stat. Same deal with the recoil. Oh, and another thing I should mention is how these shields are larger compared to some of the others, which just further increases how good they are at defending. Finally, of these big boy shields is the adamant shield. Purple and blue, it looks pretty cool. I guess I didn't mention the screws on these, yeah, they're there as well. Next is a couple of balanced shields, not overly defensive or offensive. A few of Goofy's shields are named after materials, maybe implying something about their composition. We just had adamant, and now here's mithril. It's certainly a design. I'm not sure what to think of it, but I like that it's a diamond shape. It's a balanced shield, so it has an average sort of recoil and strength. The onyx shield is the better version of this, and I quite like the black and yellow design here. The pricing is a bit odd, 2,800 money. I don't know, I'm just looking for things to talk about. Obviously with these weapons there's not much to talk about design-wise because they aren't based on a Disney World or whatever, they're just weapon designs, right? But anyway, then we have the attack shields. These are small and suited more to smacking the Heartless around, as you can see from that very low recoil. I suppose they're similar to bucklers. This is Smasher, not the most elegant name ever, but it attacks fast and it boosts strength. Also, it has some sort of fleur-de-lis symbol on the front. The Gigas Fist is the same, but with a much more muted colour palette and +7 strength. Well, we've had the Dream Staff, so of course we need the Dream Shield. This is a little trickier to get. You have to obtain all 7 spell arts from the White Mushrooms, and then talk to Merlin. To match the Dream Rod, we have another Mickey emblem, so to distinguish this from Goofy's basic Knight Shield, this one has a heater shield design instead. It's red and black, so automatically I quite like that. The MP boost was sadly nerfed in Final Mix though. Herc's shield is one of the 3 shields to drop from the Colosseum tournaments. Pretty obvious which this one comes from. It's the Olympus symbol again, so glad I'm seeing this for the millionth time, but to be fair it is pretty cool that Goofy can wield this. Genji shield, this is a Final Fantasy reference. Here's a pic of a Genji shield I think from Final Fantasy VI. I'm a bit clueless on this stuff so I had to rely on info online, but yeah, it's clearly taken from Final Fantasy. One of the more interesting shield designs, especially that unorthodox shape. This is from Yuffie in the Hades Cup, makes sense, and it got buffed in Final Mix, so it's not a bad shield to use while you wait for something better. For example, Defender, which is dropped by Heartless of the same name. Unlike theirs, the face doesn't move around, but it's still cool. It'd be quite something if Goofy could shoot fire or blizzard out of it. Hell, having special effects on Goofy and Donald's weapons. That'd be great in general, but I doubt that'll ever happen. These poor guys get more useless with every game. And here is the counterpart to Save the Queen. The design is a bit flat and outdated by today's standards, but I do like how it incorporates a heart and a crown symbol. With +2 MP, plus 11 strength in final mix, and a whopping 90 recoil. It's a great shield for all-purpose endgame use. Save the Queen was obtained from the Hades Cup solo, and so this is from the Hades Cup time trial instead. I imagine a lot of people never bothered doing the time trials, and maybe wouldn't have even seen this. Now for the last couple of shields, the final mix editions. Mighty Shield is like the Meteor Staff, a strength-focused weapon from End of the World. Massive Bumper is the literal Japanese translation, which I find somewhat amusing, especially because it isn't massive. It's a small shield, but one that packs a punch. 90 recoil means Goofy will be able to tank a lot of hits with this, but his magic isn't getting much help. Oh yeah, and it's a blue conical thing with a floating yellow ring, as you do. So if you do want to focus on Goofy's magic, like perhaps you want to take full advantage of that incredible MP gift ability, you could synth up and give him the 7 elements instead. This raises his MP by 3, though it has poor strength and recoil, so it's definitely intended for Goofy being in a more supportive role. The name is accurate indeed. On the face we can see the 7 element types in Cage 1. Fire and Blizzard front and center, Yellow Thunder, a swirly arrow, a 4-leaf clover representing Cure, a twisty timey-wimey clock face for stop, and the smallest one, a purple star for gravity. Pretty wild this design, but I do like the creativity, and it's not meant for serious defense anyway. Alright, so that's all of Donald and Goofy's weapons. Now there's a few other party members to quickly have a look at. Seriously, this won't take long. Aladdin's scimitar is simply known as Sword in the first game, and it gets the job done. It also does have a basic crit attack, but no additional bonus to it. Of course, Aladdin in the movie only wields the sword against Cobra Jafar, but the Disney characters, they're a lot more battle ready in Kingdom Hearts, because video games got a video game. Tarzan has a spear, simply named Spear, a basic wood and flint or stone kind of thing. It gets deflected very easily, which you may actually notice during gameplay. It's pretty easy to see a weapon this long get deflected. Then the last stabby weapon is Peter Pan's dagger, short, weak, but with a high recoil stat to make up for it. And of course he attacks very quickly. Beast has his claws, there's no picture for this in the first game, and no stats either. Similarly, Jack and Ariel fight with their bare hands, or in Ariel's case a tail as well. Jack meanwhile, he's more of a magic user, which I think suits him quite well. And there we go, all the ally weapons in Kingdom Hearts. Obviously, these aren't the Keyblades, they're not as inherently interesting to people, and they don't have as big an impact on gameplay. But it's still a good idea to give Donald and Goofy some powerful stuff. In Cage 1, these guys can provide incredible support if you set them up correctly, so better weapons will help them do their jobs well. Also, I think it's just nice sometimes to look at the smaller things in games, the stuff people don't usually talk about. Especially when it comes to Cage 1, small details are everywhere and they're often quite cool indeed.